As the cleanup of Vancouver's spill continues just offshore, back on dry land, the politics are getting down and dirty. The province called out Ottawa, and the city took aim at both. But if today's anger is directed at this crisis involving just one ship, it's mixed with fear for an uncertain future when the waters may be choked with oil tankers. The CBC's Chris Brown has the details.
Politically, you couldn't have picked a worse place for an oil spill, right under the noses of a skeptical Vancouver public already grappling with a push to have more oil tankers in these waters, and who today had a front row seat for the cleanup effort.
There's this this little baby duck covered in black oil and trying to clean himself, and he can't, and it's so heartbreaking.
Covered with oil?
Yes, he is.
This time, the wildlife rescue teams were lucky and saved this bird, but all day the blame game for screwing up the response was in full flight.
The response was inadequate, too slow, not enough information. This really goes back to the leadership, the lack of leadership from the federal and provincial government.
Then it was the Premier's turn.
I am very, very disappointed.
Christy Clark says the 6-hour delay in getting booms around the grain carrier that leaked the fuel was the Coast Guard's fault.
We're going to have to come up with a better way of doing this. And if that means that in the future, the Coast Guard is relieved of their lead in this and starts taking direction from the province, then perhaps that's a better way to do it.
Boater Rob O'Day first raised the alarm by calling 911 when he saw globs of oil in the water. But hours later, he says there was no sign of any cleanup activity.
We called right away. 3 hours later, it was still just the Harbour Patrol motoring back and forth through the slick.
Late in the day, though, BC's regional cabinet minister, flanked by the Coast Guard's point man, offered a vigorous rebuttal.
When you consider that 80% of the spill wasn't just contained, it was cleaned up in the first 36 hours. They're doing good work, and then to have politicians piling on and spreading misinformation is unhelpful.
The Coast Guard also said it called Vancouver police 3 hours after the first spill report, not 12 hours as the city claims. And officials dismissed the notion that closing a nearby Coast Guard base just a few hundred meters away was a mistake. It was for search and rescue, they say.
The Kitsilano would not have made an iota of difference to the response or the containment of the oil.
Fueling this debate, of course, is the issue of building new heavy oil pipelines from Alberta and the increase in marine tankers they'd bring to the coast. Opposition has been ferocious, and incidents like this seem to confirm the worst fears of the critics.
This is a wake-up call like no other.
In terms of how much environmental damage this spill has caused, the answer at this point seems to be perhaps not that much. 4 oiled birds and 1 oiled sea lion is all the Coast Guard says has been reported so far. Wendy.
So, Chris, do we know who will pay the bill for the cleanup here?
Well, it would seem that any cost of this, all the costs of this rather, are going to be borne by the owners of the grain ship, and they're in Greece. And the government, the minister responsible, James Moore, said today that that is Canada's policy. It's very clear, polluter pay. So they're going to tally up all the costs of all this shoreline cleanup, all the booms, everything that's been done, all that overtime. And Moore says they're going to pass it on to those owners.